Hey there. So in a couple weeks, I'm going to be playing guitar for a local production of Spring Awakening. I thought I would take you through the guitars I'm using, the Helix presets, as well as some other pieces of gear that I think are really helpful in a musical theater context. So let's get into it. All right, so this show is very guitar heavy, and the show calls for 6 guitars. It calls for an acoustic tuned standard, an electric tuned standard, an acoustic guitar tuned down to C, G, C, G, G, D, an electric tuned to D, A, D, G, A, D, as well as a nylon and a 12-string. I don't have a nylon or a 12-string, so for this show, I'm using the 4 main guitars, acoustic in standard tuning, electric in standard tuning, and the 2 detuned acoustic and electric guitars. So the main acoustic guitar I'm using for this show, the show is about almost over half of the show is played on acoustic guitar. And so I am using this. It's my main acoustic guitar. It's a Yamaha FJX 720. I really like the way it plays, the way it sounds. Really just a great solid instrument. I have a capo that moves all over the place throughout the show. This is the main acoustic for the whole show. Anywhere that I'm playing, there's a couple songs that call for nylon string, which I don't have. So for those, I'm just kind of putting my picking hand, I'm finger style playing, and putting my hand up kind of on the fingerboard as opposed to over the sound hole where I would normally strum. It's not perfect, but in the context of a mix, it sounds fine. So that's the main acoustic. The main electric I'm using is this Ibanez AR250. It's basically a Les Paul style guitar. It's got 2 humbuckers, mahogany, maple. Again, I really like this guitar. It plays and sounds really nice. I don't really spend a lot of money on my gear. The most expensive piece of gear I own is behind you. It's the Helix that everything's running into. Where guitars are concerned, though, I basically spend what I need to get the job done, but I don't get super precious about brands or models or where it's made or whatever. I really like this guitar. So this is the main electric. So the other 2 guitars for this show are the detuned guitars. So the acoustic detuned is tuned down to C, G, C, G, G, D. I would not try to do this with a single acoustic guitar just because going back and forth over that big of a span, you're definitely going to break a string. So I've got this for one song. It is a Washburn DK20CET. It's an acoustic electric guitar. I'm a music teacher. I'm borrowing this from my classroom right now. Nobody's using it. And I don't really have any students that would need an acoustic electric anyway. So this is on loan from my classroom. And the second electric guitar I'm just using, this is Squier Telly tuned to D, A, D, G, A, D with a capo at the 3rd fret. It's just used for Bitch of Living. But again, with alternate tunings and capo placements, over a long enough run, you're going to end up breaking a string. So I have one guitar for one tuning and one song. Same thing on the acoustic side. All right, so in the electric guitar signal, we're going into the guitar input on the Helix. We're hitting a compressor first, just to kind of even out some dynamics. I don't really have a lot of experience using compression like in a pedal format, so I'm still kind of learning, how to get it to sound the way I want. Couple spots in the show, we've got some light overdrive. It's not a super heavy guitar sound, so I'm using the Analog Man Tone King or the Tone Sovereign in the Helix, just for kind of some light overdrive. Let me make sure I'm not clipping here. Just kind of a light kind of crunch. I really like this sound. Here's a clean sound. The amp I'm using is the US Double Normal, which is like a kind of a 60s black panel twin reverb. Distortion. It's just the clean amp sound. I really like the Fender as kind of just like a pedal platform. Other than that, really, there's just a little bit of tremolo on one song. I've got a delay that I use a couple times. I'm using the Elephant Man, which is a Memory Man copy, and then just a plate reverb and a volume pedal. I generally for musicals, I put the volume pedal at the end of my signal chain because I find that I don't want the volume pedal to impact things like the compression, the distortion, the amp. I'm going to use my articulation and my volume knob for that. So this is just controlling the overall volume that I'm sending to front of house or to my speaker or whatever. So that's the electric side of things. And on the acoustic side, we've got a standard acoustic preset and then a preset that I'm using to kind of simulate a 12-string. As far as signal path, I'm using an IR just to kind of give it more of a mic'd up sound. I'm very new to using IRs, so I don't really know a whole lot about them. But like just for contrast, this is without the IR. And then this is with. It just sounds a little more natural, a little more like a mic'd up acoustic guitar. I'm using just the tube preamp and EQ for a little high cut and low cut. Compressor, plate reverb again, and the volume pedal. So that's kind of this is the preset that I'm on for like almost 2/3 of the show. And then there's a couple songs where we have a 12-string. And again, I don't have an acoustic electric 12-string, but I'm using basically the same signal chain here. I've got the IR, the preamp, EQ, dynamic or compressor, reverb, volume pedal. And then in a parallel path here, I've got the Helix 12-string simulator. Doesn't sound perfect. It's not like an exact cop. Doesn't sound like a 12-string, but it's got kind of that chorusy sound. And in the context of a mix, it works. I found that putting it directly in the signal chain, it was a little too much. It was a little too much of the effect. It sounded a little too digital. But putting it in a parallel path so you get more of the dry signal blended in, and then also adding a little tiny, like 25 millisecond delay to kind of simulate the dual sets of strings on a 12-string, does a surprisingly good job there. All right, so we've looked through the guitars that I'm using, as well as the Helix presets. Finally, there are some things that I find really useful in musical theater, specifically that I like to use on all my pit gigs. First is an iPad. This is just like I don't know how many years old it is, but it's just a normal iPad running the Fourscore app. And so I can bookmark all of my shows and bookmark stuff by title. Apple Pencil is also really handy. I can write notes in my score. I can zoom in and do like chord diagrams, things like that. iPad, the Apple Pencil, and this little Bluetooth page turner just connects to the iPad, and I can step on it just like on the effect pedal. I can turn pages like that. Really, really super handy. I generally don't use the physical books. I always scan my books and put them on the iPad. I find that that's just a much better workflow for me, especially where page turns are concerned. Having to turn pages while you're playing can be challenging, and there are some spots in the book where it's just impossible, where you have like music going over the page turn, and you have to either stop playing or photocopy it and get all weird that way. So this was like I think a $20 or $30 Bluetooth page turner, first gen Apple Pencil, and whatever gen iPad this is. For this show, I've got capos all over the place. Almost every song is capoed, and I really like these Shub style capos. Yep, this is a Shub. It's got this little knob on the back so you can adjust the width, and especially when you're changing capo positions, when you're changing spots on the neck, instrument to instrument, being able to adjust the width of the capo is really helpful for intonation, especially if you're in a pit situation. You don't want to have to be tuning loudly in the pit, while the show is happening. So these are really, really good for intonation and they're adjustable so you can use them in different spots on the neck on different instruments and all that. And I just use green Dunlop picks. Those are my favorites. And that's really it. I've got the Helix backpack here that I load all of my gear into. For monitoring myself, usually I will use either in-ears or just like a small powered PA speaker on the floor pointed at me coming out of the Helix. Another output from the Helix is going to front of house, so they're doing their own mix. Yeah, that's it. I'm really excited for this show. I just got the Helix a few months ago. I really am enjoying playing around with it so far. I really like playing guitar in a musical theater setting. And it's something that I don't really see a lot of people doing, these kinds of rig rundowns. And it's something that, when I get a show on my calendar, I always like to go on YouTube and look and see how people set up their rigs, how people set up their signal flow, what instruments you're using or not using based on what the book calls for. So I thought I would put this together. If you have any questions or any suggestions for signal flow, for routing, for instruments, leave a comment down below. And thanks for watching. Bye.